Siddhartha, congratulations. So you're coming off a very successful SNIA conference at NetApp. I think the most successful ever. Can you tell us what it was and why you think it's the best ever so far?
Thanks, Ravi, for congratulating. Actually, it's a teamwork. I wanted to tell you that SNIA, Storage Networking Industries Association, India chapter, has been longing for building a storage developers community in this city. But the point is that, and that's why we came up with this meetup concept, that how do I kind of establish NetApp's thought leadership using NetApp's data fabric vision, NetApp's aspiration of becoming data authority. How these trends actually come to that kind of an objective. Okay. We identified 4 trends, and one of them is kind of when new data are getting generated.
Abhijit, IoT and big data.
So what caught my attention with IoT actually was the entire volume of data that is being generated with IoT. Correct. So did some research and found out that a single autonomous vehicle, for example, is generating around 20 petabytes of data. And if you look at a fleet of such autonomous vehicles for a car company like Waymo, for example, it's generating 20 petabyte a day. And how do you move all of this data to the cloud? Correct. It's just not going to be possible. It's not practical. So we have to do something at the edge to make sure that our technology is embedded at the edge. So that's what we are exploring currently.
So the second trend we wanted to see is that there's another way you generate the data is through the applications. The applications are changing now. Earlier, most of the applications were in the enterprise and they were no CRM or database transactions, etc., and generated within the enterprises. Now we are saying that like the blockchain kind of applications, where people are going beyond cryptocurrency to see its application in the enterprise space.
DLT is bringing in a lot of applications, new age applications, and this is mainly due to nature of distributed ledger technology. And this blockchain application is mainly due to some of the inherent loopholes that exist in IoT lifecycle, because in Internet of Things, as you know, heterogeneous devices exist and also heterogeneous ownership of data exists. So there exist a lot of gaps or security holes like man in the middle attack can possible, where this blockchain kind of technology will actually assist in strengthening these loopholes by providing some of the inherent properties of blockchain like trustability, verifiability, and provenance of the data that is being created, stored, collected, and transmitted across your edge, fog, and core and the cloud areas. Wherever there is all these gaps are there, the blockchain application is going to address these concerns. So these applications are getting evolved to assist in IoT, and also in another technology is in artificial intelligence also, so that it can give traceability and make the blockchain to help in making those AI applications more understandable, and why certain decisions are made, because we are going to trace certain variables which goes through those machine learning decisions.
So not only are you able to trust it, you're also able to understand what drove the insight.
Yes, right. So it is going to assist in those areas. So Correct. It is not a standalone application, it is becoming like a foundational service, the blockchain applications.
Also it is now cross-organizational applications, which is probably becoming more pervasive than what used to be a very niche type of application Correct. In the enterprise. So that's an important trend we should look at, because this will kind of integrate number of organizations using these blockchain technologies.
Right. Siddhartha, so maybe you can talk to us a little bit about the advanced technology group, particularly ATG as we call it in India. You have this big focus on looking at industry trends where you kind of look multiple years out. Can you kind of give us a little bit more insight into what ATG does?
Yes, thanks Ravi for asking that question, because we talked about SNIA event, and where actually what we summarize is what ATG has been looking at for some time, about the technology trends that are going to impact NetApp and in general the storage and data industry, right? The other 2 trends which we are at this stage tracking are that we have talked about is data generation and the applications, how they are changing. Now this kind of different type of data poses different type of data management challenges. Correct. One of them is that data security, because data is no longer within your data center.
Of course.
They are distributed all over the places. So how do you kind of protect such kind of data? in our opinion, it is best to do proactively with and be associated with the data. And NetApp is in a great position because we are always in the write or read data path, data access path. So, there is a great opportunity for us to protect the data as it is getting used or malicious usage, because you can detect it very early and protect our data properly. And that is what we look at this proactive data defense as another trend for which Jayanta can talk about it.
Thank you, Siddhartha. As Siddhartha mentioned that data is no longer in the on-premise. So classically, data security used to look at encryption, key management practices mostly. But data is moving to the cloud, so various different challenges. For example, who is accessing the data in an unauthorized way? You cannot catch that person, but you have to decipher that it is happening. So how is it possible? So is it possible to analyze the file access pattern to understand certain anomalies? Is it possible to remotely verify and check the validity of the data, correctness data without downloading the data? So is it possible that certain data theft is happening, whether it is possible to check that data theft? It can be many different ways, bulk copy, anomalous behavior, whether it is possible to check that theft, whether it is possible to understand that data corruption is happening due to malware, ransomware, and whether we can directly capture those things when the data is being written right itself, because we cannot scan the entire data. It's a huge data now in the cloud. So these are some of the challenges, and that is many startups have started working in that space, and it is a great opportunity for NetApp to be in that space, and this is definitely a trend.
So Jayanta, it almost sounds like a lot of these are what you would have considered to be very, as you use the word, classical data protection kind of challenges. You're seeing the opportunity that given our role in the data fabric, to kind of have a data-centric approach to solving many of these, which is the uniqueness, which is what makes it ATG. Yeah, which is what makes it ATG as opposed to just product development. That's nice.
For example, in the access control, also you can bring in the data-centric approach instead of classical role-based access control.
Correct.
Whether it is possible to define certain attributes of the data based on which you give access to specific users of the data. That is the thing, which is much more scalable model.
I was just getting there. It's much more scalable because now you're using the attribute of data to control access, as opposed to the old world where the data is now going to be just too much in volume and too widely distributed.
Now, with such volume of data, with such distributed centers of data management, it's humanly impossible to do it, that traditional expert-based, intuitively kind of management. So, we have used this AI ML techniques to manage data. Just now I was reading somewhere that IDC workload 2018 predicts that 50% of the enterprise will use AI ML to manage their infrastructure by 2021. That means it's just 2 years from now, or the next year in fact.
It's coming around the corner.
Right, right. And that's what ATG is once again exploring, and has been exploring for quite some time how we can use this new AI ML technology to manage the infrastructure, and that's another trend we are tracking very closely.
If you look at AI ML is truly transforming a lot of industries, and it will be a curious question to know how storage industry is going to change. There is going to be a fundamental shift how storage infrastructure was managed before to now with this advent of AI and machine learning and the related technologies. For example, traditionally things, the components were not workload aware. So they were built on heuristics. And they were handcrafted. Now you can build components right from design to the end state where the algorithms are learning the workload and getting adjusted to it. The second interesting aspect is the zero touch from the availability. Deploying manpower to the systems being ability to heal themselves or provide signals so that you can preempt and stop the failures in occurring is another interesting step that's happening, where the eventual state is a zero touch system. And finally, the most interesting thing is the self-managing aspect, where the system is not only able to adjust to workload but also is going to change with respect to the environment in terms of learning from feedback. there we have technologies like reinforcement learning, where you traditionally see in gaming world, but such kind of technologies are also going to impact storage infrastructure, basically learning from feedback. So all these put together are going to transform storage industry from position A to the new position which we call next gen storage. And interestingly, if you look at it, the theme which Abhijit said about 20 petabytes of data, and Jayanta talked about data from the security angle. The connecting aspect is data, and data is being at the center, and you need really horsepower from the technologies to convert them into value and use it in a way that is beneficial for the infrastructure.
I'm seeing the similar theme, right, to what Jayanta was saying. There have been classical approaches. People have been talking about being preemptive, being autonomous. People have been talking about it for decades. I think people used to talk about it, Siddhartha, in the mainframe world.
Yeah.
But now what we are finding is that finally there are tools that are available to us that are able to operate at very massive scale and to kind of truly realize this. Is that kind of what you were looking at?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you look at the common theme, rightly said, Abhijit had 20 petabytes. I mean, it's a humongous number.
Yeah,
The scale is huge, and Jayanta talks about even access control using data driven. So we are really talking about huge amount of data, and the only way to get the value out of it is to build algorithms or get the cutting edge algorithms run on top of it.
On top of the data. So make it a very data centric solution, because otherwise the scale is just too broad and too vast to be able to deal with centrally or in the more
So it's interesting, Ravi, that now there's this large volume of data poses challenges in management. At the same time, it also aids in solving the problem because of the large volume of data.
Of course.
So that these AI ML algorithms can utilize that data itself to manage itself.
Correct.
So it's both an opportunity as well as challenge.
Ability to absorb this technology into mainstream product development, that window is kind of shrinking very fast as these technologies are kind of becoming more pervasive, right? The cost of adopting these leading edge technologies is going down very, very rapidly.
Yeah,
so the time from your innovation to the point where we can make it useful to customer is getting dramatically shorter.
That's why in many companies actually model is somewhat changing, where it's not a very ivory tower activity anymore. It's more of a regular development activity for introducing these technologies into it.
Just the right amount of distance away from our current roadmap, such that you can accelerate us in 6 months to a year, as opposed to the old model where it was 3 to 4 years out.
Yes, right.
Excellent. I think that's a very apt definition of our advanced technology group. Right. Thank you all. Thank you to every one of you.
Thanks everybody. Thanks
Appreciate
for
that.
And thanks for ATG team.